the K-Cup. I'm your host, Joe Nortrup, and this week we have a special guest. We're conducting a team member spotlight, our first team member spotlight, and we have Cameron Plumer here. He is one of our project managers here at Kelly Construction Group, and we're excited to get to sit with him and gain some insight into what that position entails here at Kelly Construction Group. So thanks for sitting in with us, Cameron.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. We know that you weren't super excited about hearing you had to be on the podcast and be on camera and all that, but
you get into construction to end up on camera naturally, right?
That's right. So we know you're a natural, though. If you do as good a job on this podcast episode as you do as PM, it's going to be all right. So here we go. We just want to get some insight again, like I said, into what it means to be a project manager from your point of view. On our team, Kelly Construction Group's team. And but before we get started, before we dive into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be here at Kelly Construction Group?
So I was actually a professional firefighter for about 6 years before I got into the construction business full time. I worked 3 years as a residential project manager, and then I've been here for about 2.5, 3 years on the commercial side. So.
Okay.
A total of about 6 years with, a few little miscellaneous renovations kind of things while I was in the fire department and on the side helping people out and just kind of trying to learn as much as I could in the field side of it.
Sure.
So, got a beautiful wife and a beautiful daughter, and I enjoy playing golf and
so
you're woodworking on the side. And
you're a duffer is what you're saying.
Definitely that.
Like to hit the links, huh?
Yeah. I get my money's worth out of it. More strokes, the more value you get.
There you go. That's right. 20 over par is not a bad deal, right? You're getting your money's worth.
If I could shoot 20 over par, I'd be pumped.
You'd be pumped, huh?
Yeah, we're looking more about 30, I guess.
Wow. It sounds like maybe I could join you guys on the links if you're in that area. Anyways, well, glad to hear that you like to get out and do something. We appreciate the fact that you're a family man. You have a young family, and that's exciting. And that obviously gives you incentive to want to do a good job and everything. So we really encourage love the whole family thing around here. So it's part of our culture at Kelly.
Absolutely.
So, well, let's dive in, man. Let's talk about, the career side of this, some of the, basics of your role. And so walk us through kind of a typical day of project management here.
So a typical day, usually first thing I do when I get in is make a pot of coffee.
we appreciate that.
And then the next thing after that is just kind of dive in emails for a good half hour, 45 minutes, just catch up on correspondence from the day before. Sometimes, there's super heavy email days, and some days there's, maybe only a couple come through. But I like to always scroll back a few days, just make sure I'm not missing anybody's emails or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good practice for sure.
That's usually first thing, and then after that, I'll kind of jump in and look at the progress report from the previous day on the projects, all the photos and notes that our superintendents are putting in there just to keep an idea of what's going on.
Good.
And then after that, it's really, I try to keep little windows in my schedule where I do the same things on certain days or during, certain blocks of time at least. But for the most part, every day's fairly different. But, you're just processing RFIs and submittals and updating schedules and collecting all the invoices so that everything's ready to go for billing.
Sure.
And just corresponding with everybody that I can.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page.
Cool.
If we're waiting, longer on something that we'd like, at least just communicate that to everybody and let them know that it hasn't been forgotten about. That it's
updates are nice.
Yeah.
Keep everybody happy.
Even if I don't have an answer, I still try to at least always, give some sort of update to touch base and just let them know that it hasn't just gone into the abyss and has
the
been
black
forgotten
hole.
about. So
that's huge, man. That's good. Did you have any idea how much administrative stuff was involved with being a project manager in commercial construction?
Yes and no. I mean, I think you definitely hear about it.
Yeah.
And then starting on the residential side, it wasn't near as much paperwork. It was still a lot, but yeah, the commercial game is just a whole different thing. You got to make sure every single thing that you do is documented in some sort of way, and
ton of layers.
that it's easily accessible. You don't have to go, digging for it for days. You want it to be right there at the tip of your fingers when you want it. So it's definitely heavy on the documentation side of it, maybe a little more so than I expected, but it definitely helps to have all that documentation, supporting you in whatever situation might be. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't document too much in this industry for sure. So what drew you to want to become a project manager in the first place? Like, what was your I don't know, your motivation, I guess, your inspiration?
So I've always been intrigued by construction. My whole life, kind of, it's just interested me to see starting from nothing and ending up with something.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I always said I wanted to be a carpenter. I don't know if that came from church or what, with Jesus being a carpenter. But the older I got, the more I realized that I didn't want to be on the tools my whole life. So that just kind of naturally progressed into knowing I wanted to be in construction in some facet, but like I said, not wanting to be sweating in the 110-degree heat out there every day like we got here. So that just kind of naturally led to construction management in school, and to here.
We'll call that a smart move on your part.
I question that some days.
Good foresight. Yeah.
Some days I'd rather be out there doing something with my hands, but
I get that.
I enjoy it, and I do get the opportunity to go out there and do that from time to time. So
sure,
it's a good mix.
Yeah, it is. It is. You do. I notice that you are always game to if Super needs a little help out in the field. You don't have no problem. Schedule allowing. Getting up and going out there and giving them a hand and stuff.
Well, it's nice to get out, but it's also it's a great time to learn.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
You really understand things in a whole different way. In a more practical way.
Yes.
If you're out there and at least watching it being done, you might not even be the one doing it, but just to see the whole process.
For sure.
It helps looking at drawings and everything else. You can really visualize a whole lot better. So
absolutely,
that's one of the bigger reasons that I try to do it when I can. It's just
I think that's smart, and I definitely think it's important to have some practical experience out in the field. Like I said, even if you're just out there as an observer and learning the process, it still helps you when you come back and have to analyze a problem and
or reviewing submittal documents or shop drawings. I mean, even simple as I went and installed some toilet partitions a couple months back, and
have a whole new appreciation for them now, don't you?
But it makes it a whole lot easier. This most recent time that I've looked at shop drawings for toilet partitions, it just clicks in a whole different way, and it makes a whole lot more sense. So
awesome!
It's definitely very helpful to get out there and put eyes on it.
Good deal. So since you started making tracks towards the project management side of things, how would you say that position's evolved for you since how you started to what you do now here at KCG?
Well, I think the natural evolution of being in any kind of management role is over time you get more responsibility put on you, and you got to figure out kind of how to manage that. My expectations for myself have become higher, have evolved to be higher over time. And I try to organize my organization. I try to make sure that's evolving as well. If I'm doing something that I see is becoming an issue, in projects, and try to switch that process out to something different. So I would say that most of the evolution is just in the processes of how you do things, and trying to streamline those and just make them more efficient and better for everybody. The more you understand your own processes, the better everything kind of flows out from that. So.
For sure. And I think the fact that particularly in commercial construction, you're dealing with architects, engineers, all these different professionals on a regular basis, the project owners a lot of times. And I think you've come to appreciate just how much a profession being a good PM really is. It's not just a job; it really is a profession, and there's definitely an art to doing a good job with it and stuff. And
yeah, it's definitely a multifaceted for sure. There's
yeah,
you have to wear quite a few hats.
for sure, changing gears constantly,
Hmm.
changing hats, and managing all kinds of different personalities and different professions. So it really is a skill, and you can get really good at it if you look at it that way and continue to hone it. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So as far as projects that you've been involved with, since you've been here, uh, do any stand out that you're just kind of exceptionally proud of the way it all came together and the way
Um,
you were able to manage things and make things work, fall into place, and
yeah, I would say we did a job at LSU for their lab schools football field. We did a really nice pavilion and concession building, and it had a lot of fairly intricate details with the
mm-hmm,
pavilion itself, and a lot of signage and everything else. And it was just that was my first real commercial ground up
mm-hmm,
build. Done a lot of build outs, but that was the first one
mm,
to go from an empty field in a parking lot to a finished result. So
yeah,
I'm proud of that one, and it took a lot of problem solving from me and Sergio, our superintendent that we had
yeah,
out there. It was definitely challenging, but I'm proud of the way that we were able to kind of put our brains together and come up with solutions
yeah.
on a lot of different things that required it. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember that project. It definitely had a few challenges when you guys first were breaking ground and stuff that you kind of had to troubleshoot and
yeah,
overcome. Since its completion, I've seen that the high resolution images that our professional photographer that we used took of the project and the drone footage, and it looked really amazing. It looked great.
yeah. It came together really, really, really well.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one to highlight. All right, good. Well, let's talk a little bit about team and kind of client dynamics. The two have to work together. So, what's one key to managing the crew out in the field, and at the same time managing the owner's expectations? How those two things kind of jive.
Yeah, so I would say it starts with the expectations with the owner. So usually, kind of at our pre-construction meeting with the owner and the architect and everybody, I try to set some realistic expectations,
Hmm.
and I just try to foster that relationship from the very beginning and establish that trust and everything there. And I think if you have that and you have realistic expectations for everybody,
Hmm.
owner included,
Yeah.
that kind of naturally steps down to the field,
Yeah.
and it just opens that door for you know we want good communication. We want you to be on time every day. Be
Hmm.
here. If you can't be here, let us know.
Yeah.
Um, and we also have a pre-construction with our subcontractors. So
Hmm.
once those expectations are set with and from the owner, that then gets passed down, at that next meeting, and that kind of sets the tone for the project.
Yeah. That's a
Uh,
great point. So basically, what you're saying is that you meet with the owners, you set the expectations are made known or set, and then that's kind of drives how you pursue what goes on in the field because your goal is to meet those expectations that you made
yeah,
with
or
the
exceed
owner,
them.
yeah,
Yeah,
or exceed them. So
yeah,
that's great, and I mean that's a process, and it's really a pretty straightforward process. But it seems like it's something that would definitely motivate you and drive you to if you're
yeah. I
that kind of person,
I definitely try to always have my pre-construction, and it usually naturally happens this way, but I always want to have that pre-construction meeting with the owner and the architect before I do the same with the subcontractors
Yeah,
for that reason, and obviously that also gives us some
yeah,
other information about how we're gonna do the job that then
yeah,
gets passed down to the subs as well. But yeah, I think it's just important to set realistic expectations with
yeah,
everybody up front because
yes,
I know, especially owners, if they're not familiar with the construction processes, which, why would they be, frankly? They
yeah,
don't need to be.
yeah,
That's why they hired you in the first place. But
yeah,
I think you just have to set those expectations to know that, it might not be like you see on TV. It might not,
yeah,
it's not going to be a 2 week thing. It's going to be a, 2 month thing or whatever.
yeah,
So,
yeah. A lot of processes have to take place for this thing to come together. So
yeah.
Cool. That sounds like a great explanation of how you manage that for sure. So, how do you keep a project on track then when things don't go as planned? Which we know that's kind of the rule of the day these days. Ever since the
Yeah.
whole pandemic thing and the
Every
supply chain
project.
issues that came up with that.
Yeah.
How do you manage all that when it
So
doesn't go right?
yeah. So I'd say that no project quite goes as planned ever in construction world. So really, that's kind of the biggest part of our job is
Hmm.
managing that. And when those things do happen inevitably, how do you get on the other side of it and come
Yeah.
out with the finished result that everybody wants?
Yeah.
But I think with a lot of things in project management, communication is the absolute key
Yeah,
to
for
all of
sure.
it. I think as soon as you hear, from a vendor, this material that we thought was going to be a 2 month lead time is now a 6 month lead time.
Yeah.
As soon as you hear that from the vendor, you got to get with your subs, say, rework your schedule. How can we keep making progress while we're waiting on this? To
Yeah.
where we're not just coming to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
And then once you have that kind of figured out, bring that immediately to the owner or the architect and just
Yes.
let them know, hey, this is an issue. And it might not always be supply chain issues. It could be, just mistakes that were made by a subcontractor or by us as the GC.
Yeah.
But I think the same rule applies there. It's just get down in front of it. We're not trying to hide anything. We're going to do the right thing. We don't want to,
Yeah.
because if you try to hide a mistake, it's just going to compound and compound, and it's going to come to light eventually. And then,
Yes.
that'll sour a relationship with an
Yeah.
architect or an owner or both. So I think it's just you got to be accountable and communicate that openly as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
That way, it's not a secret waiting for somebody to uncover.
That's a great point. There's so many different sets of eyes on a commercial construction project that somebody eventually is going to see whatever it is,
Yeah,
the issue is, and other than yourself. So,
and
uh,
it might not come up to your 1 year warranty walk, but at some point it's coming up, and
that's right.
the later it gets found, the bigger of an issue it usually is. So.
Absolutely, yeah, and we never want to give off the impression that we're trying to be deceitful or mislead somebody, and we know that John, the founder's policy is always honesty and integrity first,
Mm-hmm.
and of course that carries down to all of us in our roles too. So,
Yeah.
that's great to hear you say it out loud that that's our policy and that's how part of your taking care of issues when they come up is being honest, full disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
It's problem, solution, and communication.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome. All right, so in your experience, then, what would separate a good project manager from a great project
Still trying to learn those myself, but
manager?
I would say a few of the qualities that really make a really great project manager would be like we just talked about. You have to be good communicator, and you have to
Yes.
be willing to be honest, and you have to be accountable to yourself.
Yes.
Um, I try to always, if I make a mistake, I own it right away um, and move on from it.
Hmm.
I think after that, being organized. We talked about all the paperwork and everything else that's involved in the process. So
Hmm.
if you're not able to keep that organized in some sort of way to where you can make sure that the things are getting done that are supposed to, and going to the people that's supposed to, I think obviously that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think you just have to be willing to learn every day. There's
Absolutely.
lessons out there, whether you've been doing it for 3 days or 30 years,
That's
you can
right.
still learn something new
Yeah.
every single day if you are looking for it.
Yeah. That's right.
And really just trying to log all those in your brain to go back to on different projects.
Yeah.
You might not run into that issue for another 10 years, but you know that on this project you dealt with it. So
Yeah.
it's, I guess that kind of comes down to a mental organization of sorts. But
Yeah. I mean,
I think
that's
those are kind of three of the bigger things that, and I would say another one is just being level headed.
yeah.
Um, there's a time and place to, when pressure's on, maybe get a little fired up here and there. But I think overall, you have to maintain a more level headed approach because,
Yeah.
we're all human, so maybe an architect might be coming at you, and they're having a bad day, or an owner, or sometimes it might be coming from us to them. So and that just kind of makes the project not enjoyable for anyone, and it can be detrimental to a project. So I think coming at things with just a level head, being able to quickly problem solve, because almost every day there's some kind of issue that you got to figure out. So I think just being able to do those things
for sure. There's definitely a way to be assertive without being aggressive, and that's really, again, it's more to the art of being a great PM.
Yeah, it's a fine line for sure. Trying to walk that.
Learning how to be really well versed at having difficult conversations without that turning into a fight. Sometimes you got to talk about stuff that really just stinks. Like you just don't. I don't want to go there, but I have to.
But if you're a jerk about it, then
exactly,
it doesn't. Like you said, you can be assertive without necessarily being rude about certain things, because
it's not what you say. A lot of times it's how you say it. So
nobody wants to work with a jerk.
That's right. That's right. Good deal. All right, so let's talk a little bit about leadership itself and culture. So how do you keep morale up on the site when things aren't, the pressure's on, you're up against deadlines, like you said, you had delays in supply chain stuff, so now the whole schedule is being, what they like to call in the industry being compressed. And of course the temptation when things get compressed is to cut corners, look for ways to do something, maybe faster than what you normally would. You can't take the time with it and do as good a job. So that's the temptation and the pressure. How do you keep morale up, and how do you keep people wanting to do their best when the pressure's really ramping up?
I would say that it kind of goes back to those expectations in the beginning. Obviously, expectations can change throughout a project depending on different factors, materials, whatever. But I think as long as you're pressuring people to meet realistic expectations, I think that goes a long way for the people that you're putting that pressure on. I think it makes them more willing to go out there and bust their behinds to get it done. Whereas if you're putting a completely unrealistic expectation on, I want you to frame, hang, tape, float, finish, paint this wall, by the end of today, that's not even possible. So I think that goes a long way in just kind of letting people know where your head's at as a PM, that you're a reasonable person. You're not just yelling just to yell. But I think too, it starts, with the culture that's in the company to begin with. Like you said earlier, we kind of have a great culture here with, we're accountable. We own up to our mistakes. We'll do the right thing, even if it's to our own detriment sometimes, but we want to do the right thing for the owner to where they have the right overall product that they're happy with. So I think leading in the field in those pressure situations, kind of stems from just the everyday culture that you have in the office. So.
Yeah, for sure. So how, or what kind of advice would you give, somebody who's kind of new to the management side of managing teams in construction? Because you know how diverse, like even just your subs alone are a diverse group of people. Like they range from all super organized and meticulous to, very sloppy and hard, hard to get, on the job at times. And, you just have this wide range of personalities and stuff. How do you manage that?
Yeah, so I would say that one of the biggest things for a new PM to be good and to gain that respect from those trades, because honestly, if they don't respect you as a PM, no matter how old you are, then they're not necessarily going to listen to you when you ask them to do stuff or ask them to change something because you feel it's done the incorrect way or whatever. So I think one of the biggest things you can do as a new PM is just really sit back and listen to your subcontractors, to your superintendent, to architects, engineers, especially those that are older than you, that have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. I think that goes a long way in showing a little bit of humility, but also you can learn a ton if you just sit back. If you're always kind of trying to pipe in there and say what you know that you learned out of a textbook, that might not necessarily be the right thing. And,
trying to be the smartest guy in the room all the time. Yeah.
But if your focus is only that, then you're missing out on all that knowledge that they're sharing. And
absolutely,
there's a lot of them out there that are just a wealth of knowledge.
Yes, for sure.
So I think that's one of the bigger things. And obviously, like I said, I think being a personable PM it goes a long way as well with kind of disarming architects and owners and building that trust, and that as well goes a long way. When you have an issue, if you have a good relationship with the owner, then maybe that issue is not such a big deal. Whereas if you're not as personable with them, or they don't feel that trust or that relationship, that issue could be a big thing, but they'll give you a little more slack. And I mean, we see it kind of on every project. If we start fostering that relationship right away, especially if we're doing like a design build. We'll have the client in here. 4, 5, 6, 7 times maybe before we ever break ground on their site. So that relationship's kind of already established. But even on a public bid, at that OAC meeting, that very first one, you just try to make that impression that, hey, we're trustworthy, we're honest people, we're going to do this the best way we can. We're going to think through it, and we're going to keep you involved in the process to where we're not just doing things that you're finding out about later. And again, when you run into inevitable issues, I think that can go a long way, and just keeping everybody a little more mellow than maybe they would be.
I think trust in those relationships is really tied to confidence. And so like you're saying, having that meeting with them, setting the expectations, and letting them know that you're thinking about these things from their perspective already. You recognize that there will be issues, there will be problems that have to be resolved, and you're letting them know that you're going to do that in a positive, constructive way, and that you're going to be open and honest about it. And that builds confidence, and the confidence is what gives them trust. And like you were saying, you get on the wrong side of, an owner or an architect,
it'll snowball quick. If you get on that wrong side, then every little problem becomes a big one. And
if you've looked at enough spec books, you understand that it's kind of look like looking in a law book. There's always some law in there I can apply to you.
For sure. They can definitely
if you aggravate me, so they'll make me get the spec book out.
They can stick it to us for sure.
For sure. That's right. So very good. That's good advice. So if you are a young person out there, and you're just getting into project management, definitely heed that advice about the relationship thing, and have your ears open more than your mouth's open. And a lot of times you're gonna have a good outcome if you do that more often than not. So
I think having a little humility too. Don't be afraid to say I don't know.
That's right. Yes.
There's nothing wrong with saying I don't know, but I'm going to go figure it out for you.
Exactly.
And then you consult with those people that do know.
That's right.
But pretending to know
is not good.
It doesn't go that far.
No. Especially in this industry, and it can get you in some serious trouble.
Absolutely.
So you don't want to do that. So how does Kelly Construction Group's culture affect the way that you lead then?
So I think we've kind of already touched on it, but just briefly, John, our owner, he's built a culture here of like we said, openness, honesty, doing the right thing, and just putting out a really good final product that we can all be proud of. So that naturally just kind of lends itself into every part of a job. I also think our culture here is really light. Construction can be really, really stressful and busy at times. So I think it's good that we're able to kind of, in this office, take a deep breath and relax and bring things to John. If I make a mistake, it might be a $10,000 mistake that I made. In some companies, you wouldn't even bring that to him. You would just pack up your desk and and leave, because that you're going to be out of there after that.
There's no room for error. It's with some companies.
It's very refreshing, and it takes a good bit of the pressure off of an already stressful job, to know that hey, I can make mistakes. Obviously, we're going to try our best to not, but everyone does at some point, whether it's a big one or a small one or somewhere in between. So it's just really good to have that from an owner, and then as a project manager, that's kind of instilled in me, with subs to be maybe a little bit more patient. Maybe sometimes to my detriment, but just to understand that at the end of the day, there's we're all human. So whether I'm making a mistake on a submittal, approving the wrong thing, or they're doing the wrong process of install or something in the field, and
it definitely happens.
It happens, but it doesn't have to be
end of the world. Yeah, catastrophic. It's always amazed me that there's a huge difference between just a business owner and an owner or a founder of a business that actually understands how business works. And somebody that really understands business understands that failure is a prerequisite to success. Most of the most successful, businesses and CEOs out there in the world failed hundreds of times before they finally succeeded. So the same is true of positions like this, like a project manager. You have to be able to make mistakes, or you're never going to hone your craft at being a great PM. And so if you're in an environment where it's not tolerated, well, that's going to be a high
pressure cooker.
It's just going to be a high turnover environment. And we all know companies like that where, you see guys bounce around from construction company to construction company because, they made a mistake and got let go. And the reality is that in this industry, when you make a mistake, there might be a pretty decent price tag attached to it. But at the end of the day, you have to weigh, what was the value of that, and if you have a good culture and the people that you have, staffed up with are conscientious people like yourself, then you have to understand that was a learning moment, and whatever that price of that education was, ultimately it's up to the business owner to decide if it was worth it. But more often than not, um, if the culture's developed right and the owner is staffing with people that fit that culture, it's going to be worth it, because we know that that's going to shape and mold that position into something that's really going to become more effective down the road. And that's what we're looking for. We want to build something that's lasting and sustainable.
Personal relationships.
Yes, we're not looking for the quick fix and rule by force or whatever that mentality is. So,
and I think John sees, he values the personal relationship in his employees, and I think to your point about how does that get translated down, is I think as PMs and superintendents, that personal relationship with our subcontractors and our vendors becomes equally important.
Absolutely.
That way, your subs are going to make mistakes, like we've talked about. So just valuing that relationship to where, hey, on this next project, we're still going to use you. It's not like, oh, you made this one mistake, so you're cut from the list. If we did that, then we would have no subcontractor list, and there would probably be no general contractors either.
We'd have to start our own mechanical division. And
so I think it just passes down, like you said, from starts at the top and goes down.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, let's move on to talk a little bit about tech and tools. So just give us a little brief synopsis about the systems and tech tools that you have that help you get your job accomplished.
So we use a construction software called Red Team. That's obviously where I do 90% of my work. It's got built-in billing, scheduling, RFIs, submittals. It's got a place where the superintendents can go in there and do a progress report every day. They include all their notes. I'm able to go in there and add my notes. This submittal was sent in, and this one was approved, and that kind of thing. So that's where most of our, I guess, management happens from. The other 10% is still on the computer. We use a lot of like Bluebeam PDF review software and Outlook. I think it's kind of industry standard for the most part.
Sure.
I mean, that's mostly what we do is in that Red Team software.
Yeah, it's nice to have everything in one place and be able to get into a project, and everything you've done is right there. You
Yeah,
can reference it really quickly, and
yeah, and it keeps that record, of projects from 5, 10 years ago. We can still,
yes,
sometimes it hits your brain when you're looking at something on one job. Oh, we did this on this one, and then you can go back and look at, how you did it. And our superintendents are good about putting photos in of,
yeah,
walls before they get closed up or anything like that. So you can pretty much see just about anything you need to on those reports.
yes,
And Red Team keeps all those for us, so it's
yeah. It's really
definitely a
nice.
good reference to go back to.
Yeah, not only catalogs, written data, but it catalogs images as well.
There's days where it fights me sometimes, but no, overall, it's a really good tool to have, and
Yeah.
just being able to go back and look at projects from years past,
Hmm.
and how we handled certain problems or whatever,
Yeah.
is helpful even on projects that you're doing today.
Yeah.
Other than that, we just kind of use basic Outlook for all of our emails, and
Hmm.
um, some sort of PDF reviewing software, either Adobe or Bluebeam. We use a lot, so
Yeah.
those are kind of the main things that we deal in.
Good. Pretty basic, but uh, all very effective stuff. Really like Red Team, and it's come a long way. It continues to evolve, and I imagine, like with the advent of AI coming online,
Hmm.
I would imagine it's just a matter of time before we see some sort of automation stuff
Yeah,
happening with Red Team with AI as well.
yeah, I would imagine that would be coming
Yeah.
fairly soon as
And
well.
now you use Red Team, daily. Have you seen any of that yet? Like, have they, put any processes together or anything with
Mm,
AI or not yet?
Not that I've really seen. I kind of stick to the things that I know.
Yeah.
I'd say they've made like some quality of life improvements over the last couple of years. They are responsive. If there's an issue, we can chat with the help thing, and
Hmm.
sometimes you will see that implemented into the software, which is cool.
Yeah.
But I would say for the most part, it's just been quality of life type improvements that they've made. But
Gotcha.
I would imagine, like you said, that there's some sort of big AI tool that's coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll be helpful.
Yeah. There'll definitely be some integration there eventually. So, all right. Well, let's get back to the personal stuff. We like to dive in on the personal. So, what's the most unexpected lesson that you've learned in this position, in this role?
Um, I think one of the most unexpected lessons is the number of lessons that you learn on this job.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, you can,
Endless supply, right?
yeah, basically, if you're looking for them, even if you're not looking for them, you still end up with at least one lesson learned every day. So
I got you. Is
there's
there
that.
any that jump out at you in particular as being just really exceptional, or they're all
Um,
pretty exceptional at the time?
yeah, they're always exceptional, but I mean, there's one, for instance, I just made a mistake, reviewing a door and frame submittal. Those are my favorite.
Yeah,
Um, but it was a mistake that I had just made on a previous project, and I just made that same mistake again, and it really ate me up because I knew better this time.
yeah,
The first time you can kind of give yourself a little leeway, but this time it's frustrated me a lot. So I've had to recatalog it,
yeah,
maybe make some better notes to where going forward I don't make that mistake again. But I mean, the reality of it is sometimes you're gonna make the same mistake more than once, but
yeah.
you can
Especially if
still
you
learn
only
from
see it
it.
every couple years or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, and that's kind of the tough part. Um, some of these lessons you might not do the same thing again for another 10 years on a
Yeah,
project. So it's trying to just mentally catalog everything and be able to come back to it when you see it. So,
yeah, you bet. Doors are a tough one. I know that was tough for me coming from residential,
hmm
and handing a door in residential is, to me,
yeah,
you're very
pretty simple.
straightforward
Yeah.
and simple, but not so in commercial construction. It's almost counterintuitive the way it's
And
done.
there's so many different. I mean, residential doors. There's really only so many ways you can make them, but
That's
commercial doors
yeah,
come in all shapes and sizes,
that's for sure.
and you usually end up with all different shapes and sizes on one project somehow.
That's
But
right.
yeah, it's
Very challenging
yeah.
for sure. All right, cool. So, what do you love most about working in the construction industry?
I mean, one of the biggest things is just having that tangible, evidence of the work that you're putting in.
Yeah,
Even if you're in the office most of the time and you're not actually the one, building structures, it's still nice to know that you had a part in going from an empty field to a new building that the owner is going to use for accomplish their dreams of their business or whatever. So I think that's my favorite part and one of the most rewarding. But two, I really enjoy how it's not the same thing every day. Every project truly is different and unique, and you could build two of the same exact buildings right next to each other, and chances are they're gonna have their own unique challenges to go with them.
For sure, yeah.
I enjoy that. It keeps things fresh, and it kind of keeps you on your toes. And again, just going back to it helps you learn a lot pretty quickly.
Cool. So, if you weren't a project manager, what do you think you'd be doing?
I don't know. It took me a long time to realize that this is probably where I'd even end up, but which is why I went in the fire department in the first place. So I would imagine that I would probably have been a career firefighter with some sort of handyman type business on the side, or a furniture making business or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Basically, every firefighter's got a side job.
Sure.
When I was doing it, I cut grass on the side and did a little bit of handyman stuff like that. So
yeah.
I think I would have tried to establish more of a business, but I think I would have kept the fire department as well.
Okay. All right. Well, we're glad you decided to pursue PM because we have you on our team, and you're definitely an asset to our team.
Appreciate it.
And we're glad you're here. So, any final words for the folks listening, and particularly if there's other young folks out there that are thinking about a career in commercial construction, and particularly looking at someday being a PM?
Yeah, I would just say, try to dive in as much as you can, learn wherever you can. If you can get a summer job working out in the field or shadowing somebody, or even if it's just pure manual labor. I mean, just all that stuff is super helpful to learn. I kind of shadowed a carpenter for a couple of years, like I said, while I was at the fire department doing some side jobs, and that knowledge was a good base for me to have. But you can also dive into it with zero experience. Just you have to be willing to have that humility and be able to learn from those around you, and respect those around you that have been doing it. It's a great career. I really enjoy it. And
pretty fulfilling career. And if you like to see stuff, like you say, get built, it's a great opportunity to actually see a result for something that you're attached to. So, and that's very rewarding. I mean, and commercial is kind of cool because we get to drive around and, in different areas of town, and even in different towns. And, sometimes we'll get to see something that we participated in getting built. So it's kind of rewarding.
Well, it's cool too. I mean, even I find myself on my days off when I'm in a commercial building, I'm looking up and, trying to figure out how they did this, or why they might have designed it this way, or, so I think part of it's kind of ingrained in me, the construction side of it. So.
Yeah. You never look at even a restaurant the same after you get into commercial construction, and get on the PM side where you're, really getting into the detail of the plans and all that. Everything you walk into, every structure, you're constantly looking at the the ceiling grid and all that stuff, and just trying to figure it out. So cool. Well, we really appreciate you, man, sitting here. We know you're not huge on the whole camera thing and all that, and but we're grateful that you did, and I'm sure there's going to be some young people out there that get the opportunity to see this and are going to get inspired by all the good things that you said about it. It really is a great position. It's a great opportunity, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity in this industry out there. I mean, to me, even though it is a competitive market in the greater Baton Rouge area, and we have also a lot of out of state firms that come in here from time to time for different reasons or whatever, whether it's disaster work or whatever, franchise work. Even despite all that, there's still a feeling of a great opportunity in this industry. So, and I think that's because I think there's always room for someone that wants to really be excellent. And that's something that we've been wanting to do and work towards, is being excellent in our field. And I think that's why we continue to grow as a company, because there is definitely a demand for that. Somebody
Yeah.
that goes that extra mile and really cares. So, anyways, that's going to conclude episode 9 of the K Cup. We're glad that y'all took a few minutes to check it out. And again, we appreciate it, Cameron.
Yep,
and
you.
Come back and see us next week. We'll have another great episode for you. We'll drop it in a week. Thanks. Adios. Bye, con Dios.
See ya.
See ya.